This is the Workplace Therapist Show. Of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of the show is one singular thing, and that's to help you have better conversations and improve your relationships at work. So today's show is going to be a special leadership therapy segment show, and if you're not familiar with our leadership therapy segments, that's essentially when you're going to get stuck with a lot of me, and we're going to talk a little about some of the most common question and challenge that I've been getting today. And I say today, in the last 6 to 8 weeks, and that is how we keep our teams motivated. And so to help keep me in check on this conversation and guide our discussion, I've got my amazing creative director and lovely wife, Emily, to join us.
Hello. So good to be here with you.
Hello. So good to see you. So you're going to keep me in check, huh?
If that is even possible.
You're going to try.
Yep. Yep.
So I know we have at least a question that's going to kind of kick off our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this has been like the biggest thing that everyone's been asking me about is motivating teams. It seems like the common theme. And what's funny is everyone thinks they're unique in this.
Right.
They're like, my team, I'm struggling with this. Like it's a unique struggle that just they're facing. But it seems like every team is different. Some teams are out in kind of the front lines doing frontline work.
Right.
Some teams are in service jobs that are kind of deemed essential,
right,
doing that kind of work. And then there's some teams that are stuck at home and they're trying to work when they've got kids being schooled at home and everything else going on. So each team is different. They've kind of got their challenges. And I think my goal and hope today is we can kind of take on some of the nuances of that. But maybe a good starting place. Let's start with the question.
All right, let's start with the question. All right. Dear workplace therapist, I'm the head chef of a hotel restaurant. We recently restarted operations, and while it has been great to be back, I'm struggling to keep my team motivated. With limited service, the staff is worried and concerned about their job security. On top of that, all the additional safety protocols are an added burden on the team. On the positive side, for the most part, our restaurant patrons have been very understanding, but we do get the occasional stressed, unpleasant customer. Is there anything I can do to not only make this time easier for my staff, but also keep them motivated? Signed, Kitchen Quandary.
Yeah, I think my heart really goes out to the folks, not only folks on the front line, but the folks in hospitality,
right,
working in restaurants, working in hotels,
mm-hmm.
because there's not only all the, I don't know a better word to put it than just devastation in that industry. There's not only that stress and strain there, but there's just all the additional protocols and changes they have to make. Guidelines. So you're worrying about your job.
Mm-hmm.
Plus you've got to follow all these guidelines, which adds on extra steps in the process. Plus you have folks that are not necessarily always positive.
Right.
So
in terms of customers.
Yeah. So, several years ago, I did a TED Talk on the contagiousness of emotions in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that's going to come up a lot in our conversation today. One of the things that came out of looking at the research, so when you look at the research, and this has been a growing body of research since the mid-90s, studying the contagiousness of emotions, and they actually paid particular attention to folks in service roles.
Okay.
Because what they found was folks in service roles often have to bring a certain level of energy that is different from the person who's receiving it.
Mm.
So the extreme example that they used was hospice nurses.
Right.
You've got to come in upbeat and positive while the person you're serving is literally dying.
Right.
Right. So it has an extra level of strain. So here we're asking these folks to show up, and whether they're cooking in the kitchen or serving customers, and show up with a very kind of positive energy,
right,
while the person on the other end may not be reciprocating that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a challenge in that. So as the leader, which is really the question here, as a leader, what do I do in that situation? I got these people really worried about stuff. So I'm going to go back to one of my favorite all-time things I talk about on this show. It goes to a guy, famous theologian at Emory's Theology School named Jim Fowler.
Mm-hmm.
He's since passed away, but Jim Fowler used to say, you want to give people hope and handles.
Right.
Hope and handles. And I think there's probably no better time for that concept than right now.
Seriously, yeah.
Hope and handle. So hope is kind of like, it's going to be okay. Like we're going to come out on the other end of this. There will be a normal again. It may have a little bit of a difference. It's likely going to. But I do think we'll get back to a day when there won't be masks and restaurants will be full and hotels will be full and
Right.
everyone
People get on planes.
people will get on planes. Everyone's going to be laughing and enjoying themselves, and and economy's going to be good and all those sorts of things. So I think it's reminding people of hope. I think that's an important job of any leader, is provide hope, because what creates a lot of the anxiety and tension is uncertainty. So we've
Right.
got all this uncertainty. So gives people something to anchor to, which is hope.
Okay.
The other part that I think is really important too is that when we're dealing with crisis, you need to keep the team focused 1 week at a time.
Yeah.
So because that's easy to control. I can control
Easier,
today.
yeah.
Easier. I control today, tomorrow I can see a week out. So as the leader in the kitchen, really get people to focus. Okay, so it's going to be different, but for today, this week, let's focus on this. Let's deliver the best experience we can to our guests and deliver the highest quality that we can
Right now.
and really
Yes.
take pride in what we're doing right now. So in some ways, just to kind of add another little extension to this, and we can talk more about this if you'd like to, but we're really resetting the culture. So what is, you always have a kitchen culture. There's always a culture in every single place. And every place has a culture, whether we're talking about being, in a hospital wing, or we're talking about a hotel kitchen, or we're talking about an office. Every place got a culture.
Yep, baseball team, whatever.
Baseball team, whatever it is. And it's the leader's job to be intentional about setting that culture. So don't be afraid to reset that culture for this time. So
And how would you do that? Is there a conversation you have? Do you literally sit down with your people and say, I'm resetting the culture?
so that's a great question. So if I was to be very prescriptive, I would say culture, to really do it well, is made up of 3 to 5 kind of principles or values. So 3 or 5 ways you want people to operate.
Okay.
And you ideally want them to be a mix of operational values, like quality and speed, efficiency, and a mix of relational values, which is
Okay.
empathy and care and listening and those kinds of things. So as a starting place, I would sit back and think about, okay, how do I want my kitchen, if we're talking about kind of the head chef, how do I want my kitchen to run over the next, or the foreseeable future? What are the big things I really want my staff to stick to, that are going to be the things that we're going to feel good about at the end of the day, no matter what happens? So maybe just quality. Really, you don't have as many patrons. So does that give you the opportunity to spend a little more time on your craft? Or maybe it's, speed, responsiveness. Make sure that we're getting the food out to them quickly. Or maybe it's, additional, care. How can we provide them an experience where they feel like they're pulled away from all this anxiety and stress? There's no right or wrong answer to it other than what matters to you. And then share that with your team. Say, here's what I want us to really focus on. Now, if you want to, you can provide them opportunity to give you feedback on that. Or you might just say, you know what, this is really, or they may be looking to you as kind of the
Sherpa.
the Sherpa or the captain of the ship while we're in the middle of the high seas. And they're
That
looking
makes
for that
sense.
guidance. They're not looking to offer any input. They just really want you to tell them, kind of give them that sense of certainty. Because culture is also another form of certainty.
Right.
So we're giving them hope, certainty about the future. We're also giving them certainty around the week.
Right.
Just focus on these things, right? And this is keep your head down, focus on this. We can control this. We can control the quality of what we're doing, or how we respond to a customer. We control that. So anchor them to what they can control, and that will help to kind of keep them focused, keep some of the noise out, and keep them motivated. So that would be kind of a good maybe starting place as we're thinking about the leader around this.
Yeah. Yeah. So a kitchen is that's an in-person workplace. A lot of people right now, of course, are virtual. Is there a difference in how we, operate with our teams, if it's in real life or electronically? Is there a different way to communicate with them?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference is when we've gone virtual, all the natural, organic conversations that happen as we're working alongside someone isn't there.
Right.
I can't just ask you a quick question or pop into your office or, whatever happens to be. I can't do that. We can't just, connect after work or grab coffee.
Right.
So this is a geeky phrase that I use, but you have to kind of operationalize the relational stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you have to be really intentional about putting it on the calendar. So I'll be even more prescriptive. What I'm finding as a good technique that helps to motivate teams is double the amount of time you're spending with team members.
Okay. What does that look like?
So if I'm normally would connect with you once a week, connect with you twice a week.
And what are we talking about or doing during that connection time?
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a little bit more about what's going on in your life. I'm going to try and figure out more about your world and what your particular constraints and needs are. Now,
Okay.
I'm talking. I think this is important whether we're talking about in person with kitchen staff, because
Right.
it's also important to know their stress that they've got at home, right?
Right.
If they're coming and working, and it turns out that they've got 3 kids and they're all working and they're all at home, whether they're in a house or apartment, and they're virtual school, that's got to be stressful for you.
Yeah.
But it's also important if you're at home with them, and expected to be both a teacher and work at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So understand the constraints of the person, because they're all going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a spouse that's unemployed. They may have elderly parents that they're worried about might get sick. There could be so many different needs.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to connect that way and learn about those. And then regularly check in on that.
Okay.
Because you're going to get points for asking the question,
Okay.
but you're going to get tested. Did you remember?
Oh.
So that's the important part. Because if you never bring it up again, they tell you all the stressful stuff. You're like, oh, that's too bad. And you never bring it up again.
Yeah.
They're like, she was just going through a checklist.
Yeah. Kind of dismissed.
He was just kind of like, he was told, someone told him, he read in a book somewhere to ask this question. So you've got to make sure you're following up on that, because that shows that you care. So, yeah.
Do you have to make yourself care? Is that sometimes I think sometimes people as leaders, we're overwhelmed ourselves. So it's a lot to take on.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
And so
You have no option. It's not even an option or a choice. And I want to be very, very clear as to why. This is not to make leaders therapists. That's not the goal of leaders.
Okay.
The number one role, people who've listened on the show have heard me talk about this. People who've heard me speak in classes have heard me talk about this. The number one first job of any leader is to drive clarity.
Okay.
Clarity, which we could also translate to another word, focus. So if you've got all this stuff going on in your head,
Right.
and you can't focus, I need to focus you.
Mm.
And so one of the ways I'm going to focus you is by listening to you and understanding that and providing you support.
Mm.
So you feel heard and supported, and that noise settles down, and then you can focus on the task ahead.
That's a great way to say
If
it.
I don't do that, then you're going to be distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're in the kitchen next to me or whether you're on a Zoom call somewhere miles away. I've got to focus you, because that's the job of a leader is to drive clarity and then ultimately alignment.
Okay.
Whether we're talking about in the kitchen or we're talking about military unit or we're talking about, an office of attorneys or whatever happens to be, clarity and alignment.
Okay.
And right now, the alignment part is hard and clarity is hard because people have their own personal stuff. So we need to attend to it to help get people kind of aligned.
Now you said leaders don't have to be therapists, but doing that exercise I think it could take a toll. How do you, as a leader, ask all these questions, actually get curious about your people, but not get sucked into where you're trying to help or rescue or get too involved into that backstory? How do you maintain that?
Okay, so we'll go back to another kind of term I've used a lot on the show, one of my favorites, which is author versus editor.
Mm.
Okay? As leaders, we're not responsible for people's personal life. Mm-hmm. We're not responsible for how they're feeling. We're not responsible for their situation. What we are responsible for is providing them necessary support to do the job that's in front of them. So, if you think about just the fundamental nature of a manager is supposed to kind of be very clear on what you're supposed to do. Right? Provide you the tools necessary to do it, and then provide you support and resources to help you along the way. That's a fundamental job of a manager. So you can use that checklist and say, if my manager's not doing any of those things, then she or he is not doing their job. I don't care if they're a VP or a supervisor. That's the fundamental job. So I say that to say, you want to listen and then you can easily turn back to them the ownership question, which is, how can I support you?
Okay.
What do you need from me?
Well,
which is another way of saying, you're going to author and I'm going to edit, right? Don't say, well, have you tried this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? What about this? Now you're authoring for them. You're authoring their life. That's not your job. So all you got to do is ask, listen, and say, that sounds really hard. What can I do to support you? Now, more often than not, 80% of the time, I'm going to stick by that number, 80% of the time people are saying, nothing. I'm just thankful. Thank you for listening.
Mm.
You're going to get that 8% of the time. 20% you might get a curveball, which is, I think, what you were about to throw at me.
Like if they say, I really need you to arrange for childcare in my home while I'm trying to do these Zoom calls.
So if they make an ask like that and it
Yeah.
involves resources, you have two choices. First, you have to ask yourself, do I have the resources, right? If you do have the resources, then you can say, let's see if we can make that happen. Some companies have created a pool for that. And you can say, let me check with HR. We can do that. And you can always say, let me check with HR if you're in a kind of a regular company. If you know for a fact you don't have those resources, then you can just say, I wish I could. We don't have those resources. But let's you and I think of some other solutions that might help solve for this.
Mm.
So
it's back to the author-editor.
Yeah.
You're getting them to help you.
Yeah,
getting them to author.
You can co-author with them,
Mm-hmm.
but it should never be your responsibility to solve their problem like that.
That makes sense.
Provide them support, but it's not. They can't just say, "Well, you need to fix this for me." But I think going back to your original question of what's different with the virtual teams, we've got to make double the time we spend and make sure we're intentional about asking those personal questions. But that would also be true in in-person teams too.
Right.
You don't have to double the time in in-person teams, but you do want to ask those personal questions. You want to get a sense of what's going on, because remember, our job is we got to get everybody focused here, focused and aligned on what needs to get done.
Right. So back to your TED Talk too, where you talked about contagious emotions in the workplace. So if we have customers who are coming in and they may be off-putting or even angry, that is an emotion that's being brought into our workplace. How do we combat that? How do we help our employees kind of shield themselves from that, or how do we support them in dealing with that?
It's funny, when I don't know what some of the more recent research around this is, but I recall that a lot of the research pointed, as I said before, not all emotions are equally contagious. Some are more contagious than others. And I seem to recall anxiety was one of the most contagious.
Really?
And so I think I dismissed that at the time. Like, okay,
right.
But we're seeing that as a major issue today. So anxiety is a high energy emotion.
Right.
So when we feel anxious, okay, you can eliminate that or address it in one of two ways. You can calm it with meditation or prayer. That's one way we combat anxiety. Or you can fight energy with energy. And so we conquer anxiety by exercise. We just we run really hard, we work out really hard, and that calms anxiety as well. So you can combat it one of two ways. That's when we're dealing with it personally. Now, when we're dealing with another person,
right,
then it really is, you want to try and calm it. You want to calm it as much as you can. So I think one of the best things that a leader can do right now is, if they're walking into an environment that they're pretty certain is going to be a high anxiety environment, very tense, prepare yourself to come in with either a very calm presence or a positive presence, or both.
Okay.
But calm or positive.
Yeah,
and
you're almost guarding yourself up or shielding yourself with good.
Yes, and I want to be clear on this. So when you think about calm and coming with a calm presence, and you kind of close your eyes and think about that, it's not about kind of keeping your distance and kind of sitting on the wall, being kind of a wallflower and disengaged. It's more of walking into the middle of that fire, calm, to put it out. So you're going to walk into that environment and say, what can I do to help you right now? Or let's just talk. And letting someone talk and just listen, they'll burn their fire out. Where we see, if we watch a lot of viral videos, when we see it go south is when people try and argue or try and fight that fire with another fire, and it just stokes.
Right.
Right? Just calm and listen. They'll just burn themselves out. They'll wear themselves out.
Yeah.
So coming in with a very calm presence, be prepared to be very, very calm. When you're dealing, if you think you're going to be dealing in high anxiety situations or high stress environments with customers.
Mm-hmm.
But the same thing with your staff. If you think your staff, so you think about kind of working in the kitchen again, there's going to be tension when you've got to work with other people and they've got to you've got to work as a team. And if they're not quite meeting your expectations, you might want to kind of snap. And so as the head chef, you have a choice. You can either yell at that person or you can kind of come up and say, hey, I totally get you're stressed out. Let's approach this a different way.
Right.
And I would encourage as best you can to try and really bring a calm presence. So I'm going to give a kind of a side note to this.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you kind of thinking in your back of your mind like, Brandon, no, that's not really how it works.
Right.
How it really works is you just come in there and you get louder and you kind of put them in their place. Okay. So years ago, I worked with a group of prison wardens.
Mm. Yeah.
Prison wardens all over
Right.
all over the United States. And these are like the most high security
Right.
prisons. Like one of the wardens talked about having Timothy McNay in his prison.
I remember.
These are the prisons where these are federal prisons. This is where all the executions are done. These are the most violent criminals in the United States.
Right.
Okay, so these are not your local county prisons.
Right.
This is prison with a capital P.
Right.
Okay. And I expected, getting ready to work with this group, that it was going to be all like the Shawshank Redemption kind of prison warden, right?
Yeah.
Kind of tough, maybe like a little
Beefy.
just, either like really, really beefy, you're not going to mess with me, or a little smarmy or whatever. The most calm, quiet individuals you've ever met.
Mm.
Some of them were a little bit doughy. They were just kind of like these, and they had this kind of like this quiet kind of therapist or kind of priest vibe about them.
Mm.
And one day we were breaking for lunch, and I was like, this is really interesting vibe. Like, I didn't expect this. And they said, we set the tone for the prison.
Oh. They knew that.
They knew that. If we come in like, then you've got 500 of the most violent people in the United States. And what do you think that's going to turn into?
Yeah.
Bad stuff is what's going to happen.
Right.
A lot of death.
Mm-hmm.
But if we come in very calm, very relaxed, talk to the prisoners, really get to know them, listen to them, it's going to set this calm mood and calm and chill, and everybody's going to be calm and chill.
Right.
And that's what needed to happen. So, and when you see like one of my very dear friends, and I consider him a colleague, I consider him a mentor. You've met him, General Ken Keene, one of the calmest guys.
Yeah.
And he is a recognized, highly awarded Army Ranger, and had very senior roles, and has served in the military his whole career until now, doing work at Goizueta Business School and leading in leadership work. So he's done very serious work and had to lead in very serious situations, and extremely calm, because that's what was necessary in order to focus people. So you've got Army generals, you've got prison wardens. If they know they need to do this in those situations of real intense energy and anxiety, then that's absolutely what you should be doing right now. So channel your inner general and really bring that presence. It's not weak, it's focused.
Right.
But it's a calm focus.
Right. Harness that energy. Yeah, because otherwise it just comes out as chaos.
Yeah, you just ramp everybody up. And I can tell you, no one needs to be ramped up right now.
No, that is completely true. Yeah. I mean, even in normal times, you would say we don't need to be ramping anyone else up, but so much more so now.
Yeah, because everybody's in a different situation. Everybody has got some kind of disruption going on in their life.
Yeah.
That is not normal or not what they expected or not what they wanted. Everyone's cheese has been moved.
Yes. Yeah. Nobody had this on their vision board in January, for sure.
Yeah. Everyone's cheese has been moved, except our dogs. Our dogs are quite happy with the situation.
Yeah, everybody's dog is happy. They're like, the people are home. Hooray.
Yeah. Dogs are happy. People are not.
The cats are pissed, but everyone else is really happy.
The cats are pissed.
So that's keeping everyone calm and focused. And how does that bleed into motivation? So I think if we're calm, okay, but like get the carrot going. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so a couple of ways we can do that.
Okay.
So as a good, so you think about kind of environments that are typically high energy has been retail.
Right.
And years ago, one of my clients that I worked with, she was a GM of a large luxury retail store. She said, I know I need to light a fire in my people, but sometimes I need to light a fire under them too.
Mm-hmm.
So lighting a fire in people is an inspiration. Lighting a fire under them is urgency.
Right.
So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about urgency today because that's in my book, The Hot Sauce Principle, How to Live and Lead in a World that everything's urgent all the time. But there is an amount of urgency we need to put on folks. So there may be a time when we want to put that hot sauce on, but just be careful right now because everything's covered in hot sauce because of all that anxiety. So you want to do that in a very focused interval training kind of way, where if you're going to do it, give people a break to reset. Don't just pour it on every time they walk in the door. You need to give them time to rest. But inspiration is another way we can do this. Okay. So inspiration can be around you're inspiring them to kind of grow and learn. So it's reframing. There's two ways we can do it. One, personally, which is reframing the situation as a growth opportunity. Right? We're all going to grow differently through this. We're going to grow. We're going to get smarter, faster. We're going to learn something. So that might be. Let's go back to the kind of the hotel kitchen, for example. Maybe you move people around and get them to try different stations.
That's a good
one. So they can learn different things. You know, if you were in a real big dinner rush in normal times, you wouldn't have that luxury.
Right.
Because of the demand. But maybe you have a little flexibility and you can try people out in different stations. So they're growing and learning a different thing. And you can even ask them, what else would you want to learn in the kitchen? We have a little flexibility. Let's see what we can do to give you other opportunities. So when it does come time for full staffing, everyone's a little more generalized.
Right.
Everyone's picked up some more skill sets. So you can do it that way. Frame it as a growth opportunity, which is important. So that's one way to kind of inspire people. Also to kind of remind them that, you know, what you see in them. Part of inspiration, the word inspiration is to breathe spirit into someone. So what is it that you see in them that impresses you? So you've always been really good at this. I'd love to see you continue to kind of work on this. So that's another way. The other kind of component around this is you can also inspire people around team goals. So you can say, let's see, if we pull together, you know, we're going to be okay as a team. We're going to kind of survive and thrive together. It reminds me of kind of back in 2008, 2009, when you and I, you know, one of the things we used to do pretty regularly was we'd go to the Ritz-Carlton Buckhead for anniversaries. It's since rebranded, which we're both sad about. But back because and the reason why was the service at Ritz-Carlton was so different and unique, and the way those teams ran was so unique. And so I can distinctly remember being in there, you know, getting in there for brunch in the morning and talking to the cook who was making the omelets. And I said, "How are you doing?" And he's like, "You know, I'm really worried. We need more customers in here." Like he was thinking about customers.
Right.
Even though his task was to make my omelets, he was thinking about customers.
Right.
And was wanting more customers. And the valet said the same thing. Gosh, I really I would love to get more customers. We need more people to come. And so getting everyone aligned around a more common goal and getting them thinking that way can also be another way to kind of focus them and motivate them. So they're less focused about themselves and more focused generally. When what was interesting was they all felt like they were pulling together as a team.
Right.
And what was beautiful about how that story ended until the next chapter when they rebranded, which I still think that was the wrong decision, but that's a whole other side note. Because for years after that, it was the same people there. They were there. It was the same valet. It was the same folks taking our luggage up to our room. You know, the bellhops, same guys making our omelets, same guys serving us in the kitchen. Yeah. The waiters. I mean, for over a decade, same people. Yeah. And of course, they changed when they rebranded. They changed out all the staff, which was unfortunate. But it was the same people, which really showed you kind of that focus and loyalty and commitment, and just they were focused on something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And they were part of a team.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that you can kind of keep in the back of your mind around this. How do I create that environment so people are they're focusing on the team goals and not on the individual?
I like that too, though. I know when I work in the office, that's a good kind of vision. Is we're all in the back and we're working to be a team. It's been really good because I have to deal with the public, and I actually had one girl in the back saying. You know, she was like, I don't want you all attorneys to get COVID. I pray for you every day. And just that idea of somebody, you know, looking out for our team in such an intimate way is powerful. That is really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So any big conversations that you can think specifically leaders need to be having with their people? Like we already talked about, they need to engage personally. They need to know their people. So they need to then figure out a way to inspire them bigger than themselves and get them plugged into the purpose of their team. What else?
I wouldn't add much more to that other than something I hinted on, but let's make it a little more clear. Add in that growth conversation. What do you want to grow and learn right now?
I do think that's, been one of the pluses of 2020 is that, everybody, maybe you have picked up a paintbrush and painted a room in the house, and maybe you have sat down and written a blog, or maybe you have played Uno with your kids every night. So there are some pluses in that way. So just keeping it further that way. So you're saying how do they want to grow?
Yeah, just add that as a conversation. So in addition to checking in with them, asking any growth opportunities that you can provide them that maybe weren't there before, or just learning about what they want to, what their goals are. That helps them feel heard and understood and feel like you're bought into their career and their growth. And then, of course, being really, really clear on kind of the overarching goals for the group and culture. I mean, I think that's probably a good kind of summary to this. The last thing I would add in this is probably a good kind of closing comment for our discussion today. So in studying high-performing teams across the globe, for decades, what they found was in the highest-performing teams, they gave each other positive to negative. I think they used to call this, traditionally it's been called feedback. I've revised it to interactions.
Okay.
Positive to negative interactions at a ratio of 5 to 1. And so think about that when you're thinking about that, your team environment. Is there playfulness? Are there enough positive interactions with each other that outweighs any negative? And negative can be critical feedback that you're giving someone, but it can also just be a negative experience that they're having with a customer. So you want positive to negative interactions, for 5 interactions for every 1 positive, right? So making sure you've kind of got that ratio. Why I love that ratio is the Gottman Institute studies marriages and personal relationships. And they found the same ratio in couples that have been together a long time, had a healthy dynamic. There were 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. And then in studying kids with behavioral disorders, they found the best way to help kids overcome behavioral disorders was 4 positive pieces of feedback for every 1 piece of negative feedback. So what you get...
So kids need more.
Kids need more, but they need positive feedback. In that case, it's more direct feedback, but it's still, so it's 4 to 1, but you're getting the same ratio popping up in different parts of of life. And so the good concluding thought around that is, if we want people to change their behavior and walk with us over a long period of time, we've got to make sure there's more positive in that experience for them around us than negative.
Right, absolutely.
So that's probably a good closing thought. Make sure that, as you're driving clarity, you're doing all these things, kind of the way to kind of keep it moving is make sure that there's some positive going on. And then maybe that's you just coming over and tapping someone on the shoulder and saying, well done. That was really, I know this was hard, or you did that, or I really like the way you did this.
Just saying thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you's good. If you can, thank you and great job are good.
Right.
But try and be a little more specific on what it was that they did.
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about feedback, any kind of feedback is behavioral psychology. So you're reinforcing a behavior. So you want to make it really clear they know the behavior that you want them to repeat.
Absolutely.
So if you end a shift and you go, great job, they're going to say,
why? Yeah.
What did I do that was a great job?
Yeah.
It was just a great job. That's not helpful.
No, but
right?
Thanks for taking that customer when Sally was behind in the weeds. You
right?
did
or the way you stepped into this particular part of the kitchen, and when we kind of the last minute, and you kind of held the station down for the night. That was impressive. And you were calm under pressure.
Yep.
And so being able to kind of recognize the positive things and acknowledge those is another way to kind of keep people motivated, because they feel kind of recognized. So it's an important thing. It's a simple thing. Everyone knows this is important. But one final piece around this: when time's our most precious resource and everything's urgent all the time, the first thing that goes out the window is positive feedback. That's the first, because we get so focused on our own stuff. we stop looking to our left and to our right. We stop giving that positive feedback. So that's kind of your final sauce.
Be intentional.
The final thing to kind of sprinkle into the stew
Yep.
is make sure that you're walking in not only calm and you're doing all the things we talked about here today, but you've got this eye for how can I reinforce and look for positive things that my team is doing and recognize that.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay.
I like it. All right.
All right. I'm exhausted.
Okay. Time for a nap.
Thanks for coming on the show with me.
All right. It was fun. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have to do this.
We covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, that was tiring.
That was a lot. I feel motivated.
Do you feel positive?
I feel positive.
All right. I can
Feel
feel it.
positive and motivated.
All right. Let's do it. I'm urgently awaiting the end of this.
Oh my gosh. And thank you for listening and watching, of course. Continue to watch us every week and listen to us every week as we keep up the fight to make our workplaces more dysfunction-free and healthier. And if you're listening on iTunes, which I sure hope you are, please rate and review the show. That's how folks find out about us. That's how we increase the size of our tribe. And if you haven't bought a copy of my book, The Hot Sauce Principle, How to Live and Lead in a World Where Everything is Urgent All the Time, why haven't you? You should totally buy a copy of the book. It's a great book, a great resource to help you not only how to create proper amounts of urgency and manage that properly so you don't burn out your team, but also how to push back on your boss when they try and put too much urgency on you, and even how you manage it in life. So check out a copy. It's an easy read, and frankly, it's written for you to help you kind of survive in times like these. So until our next show, have a great week and an awesome life.